So Smite is a game where you're often somewhat forced to follow the norms in terms of classes and conquest roles. Assassins go jungle, mages go mid, guardians go support, you get the idea. Hell, even the whole blessing system follows this rigid structure, with the jungle blessing being named after assassins, etc. And while there are definitely some cool picks that go completely against these norms, like the various assassin supports we've seen in the past, or the huge variety of gods in solo lane that makes the role really enjoyable in my opinion, I think it's safe to say that 80% or more of your matchups in any given role are against the designed class for that role. Hi-Rez have even shown their preference towards keeping the game this way multiple times by repeatedly nerfing assassins like Fenrir and Nejar when they have been viable in support until people no longer play them there. In that respect, I really don't agree with Hi-Rez's design decisions. I wish they would encourage and promote picks like Nejar support more, not less, but that's just my opinion. I'm sure they have their reasons, such as ease of learning the game for new players and the like, but I myself am a big fan of off-role picks, so here are 5 that I really wish we'd see more of and that Hi-Rez will promote more in the game. But before we dive in, if you enjoy my videos and are in the over 60% of people who watch them but aren't subscribed, why not join up? It's free and you can always unsub if you like, but let's get into this. So first up, and an archetype I've been wanting to see for so long, we have Mage Supports. I really truly enjoy seeing innovation in the support role most of all, and I personally think support mages are the best way forward for that. The definition of a support in Smite is basically synonymous with tanky god with CC, and the few picks that break the mold in that regard, such as Nox support or Aphrodite support, are often underwhelming. I'd love to see some gods specifically designed to be mage supports with a strong focus on either healing or strong buffs and debuffs, or even both. A god that has many abilities that can buff their teammates in different ways and augment their damage output, tankiness, sustain, movement, etc. Aphrodite is probably the closest god in Smite that we currently have to fit this playstyle, but in my opinion a lot more could be done around this style of play, and I'd love to see several mages that are designed to work in support. If they work as traditional mid lane mages as a side effect, then that's great, but I'd really love to see some gods designed from the ground up as a buff/debuff oriented support mage. The contrast between support players that enjoy and play gods designed in this way versus the traditional tanky CC oriented guardian supports would be a really interesting dynamic, I think, and you may even want to build your team comp differently based on what kind of support your team has. Baron Samedi is a nice addition to this potentially viable mage support roster, and he's definitely the mage with the most success under his belt in that role. However, he tends to play much like a guardian but just from the mage class, building the same tanky build and using his CC to disrupt and peel. I'm itching for more squishier supports that come with powerful buffs and debuffs, but Baron was a great step in the right direction in my opinion. It may require a significant change in how many players approach the game for these types of gods to truly fit in, but when done right, I think this could make duo lane a much more interesting place. So the number 2 off-role pick I'd love to see more of in Smite is assassins in mid lane. Once again, this is something that has been explored a little bit in the past of Smite, especially in the days of Hand of the Gods as an active item that could hit lane minions, but has never really found actual success. This is probably partly due to the rigid structure of Smite team comps that requires your team to bend around you if you want to play a physical mid laner, since the mid in traditional conquest composition is the main magical damage dealer, and sacrificing that for a physical mid laner means the ADC, jungler, or perhaps solo laner will have to change to a magical. But to me, I feel like there's just a lot of barriers and stigma that people throw out there that's saying assassin mid isn't viable, when some assassins can easily compete for wave clear and early lane pressure against mages. This is really a pick that requires the whole game of Smite to break the mold, because when you have an assassin in mid, you're probably going to lack big AoE burst damage and magical damage in teamfights that will hurt your comp in the long run, unless Titans specifically design some assassins with high AoE burst in mind. A vast majority of the assassins currently in Smite focus on single target damage, and only really a few have the capability to AoE burst on a level even close to traditional mages. However, I think this archetype has more potential with the current roster than support mages do. I feel like for support mages to be viable, we need a few specific character designs to break the stigma against that class being in that role, that might allow for a few other suitable picks like Nox to enter the fray. But I genuinely feel like as long as you bend your team comp slightly and put some AoE burst in a different role, you can make assassin mid lane work quite effectively as a high pressure alternative to mages in that role. Assassins are the natural counter to mages in Smite, so if you had an assassin vs mage matchup in mid lane, I think it would be a really interesting dynamic. For pick number 3, I'd love to see some more tanky Guardian style junglers. This is probably the least crazy of the 3 picks so far. We've had some successful Guardian jungle picks in the past on teams that want to play a sort of double support style composition. Hell, we've even seen Guardian jungle do work in the SPL from time to time, so it's definitely possible even at the highest level of play. And I'm not really talking Kabrakan style junglers here. Kabrakan jungle basically just plays like a magical bruiser assassin. I'm talking more about supportive guardians in the jungle like Geb, Athena, Khepri, etc. as an additional support pick to whatever you have in duo lane. This could also open up opportunities for mages or assassins in support that I mentioned earlier in the video if you have a more tanky frontline guardian in the jungle role. This does require a team that knows how to play with this pick though. An assassin will easily out-jungle the Guardian early on, and the team with the Guardian needs to acknowledge that and play around it, but I think more picks like this in jungle could make it a much more interesting role. The role of the jungler in Smite is really to get your lane rolls ahead and spread your attention to where it's needed, which is much like the current support's duties in the game. So I don't think it would take too much of a mindset change for supportive Guardians or support players to see some level of success in jungle. Of course, not all Guardians will be viable, just like not all Hunters are viable in mid and not all mages are viable in solo, but seeing a handful of Guardians among the typical assassins and some warriors of the jungle would really shake up the meta and make it more interesting in my opinion. So this next pick is really one that I would personally love to see, but I doubt will ever become a viable option, that being Hunters in jungle. Kurnanos is a shining example of this since the devs have confirmed that he was designed to be somewhat viable in the jungle as well as in ADC. In fact, his passive was designed mostly for that, being able to cleave the side minions of jungle camps while you hit the big minion in the back. However, I think he ultimately failed because of his lack of gank potential and kind of bad mobility. Even with Blink, Kurnanos will struggle to get really effective, hard to see coming ganks like most high mobility assassins can. His CC is very weak outside of his ultimate, and even that takes a long time to come through in comparison to a lot of traditional jungle CCs. Now let me be clear. As with every other pick on this list, I'm not saying every hunter should be viable in jungle, just a few, because currently there's literally none that are really viable there, and it kind of makes me sad, because I personally quite like the design of a lot of hunters in the game, but I hate playing ADC, so I never really get to try out those hunters, because outside of a few ability-based burst hunters in mid like Ula, they're only really viable in that one role being ADC. I think gods like Hu Yi, Anhe, or Heimdall can really shine in the role, with Anhe specifically having some amazing gank tools and ability to fight really well in jungle corridors, since he can impale you into terrain walls and block off pathways really well with his shifting sands. Add to that his high burst damage, and I think he could gank very effectively from the jungle. But as with many of these other off-roll picks, I'd like to see another cracker to hunter designed for jungle, because Kurnanos didn't really work in that regard. And finally for this video, we have assassin supports. Definitely the most realistic expectation of the video. Assassin supports have seen reliable top level play in the past, and have even run the meta for a few months at a time, such as in early season 6 when Fenrir and Neja were top support picks and were frequently banned, mostly due to their prevalence in the role. But we can't continue further in the world of assassin supports without mentioning Serket, the queen of aggressive supports. Serket is probably the only assassin in Smite history to see consistent top level play in the support role, and she still sees play there to this day. So what's so special about Serket that makes her such a viable support, where Neja, Fenrir and the like have been more flavour of the month picks and not much more than that? Well, Serket has incredible CC and mobility, allowing her to play the aggressive frontline support style better than most Guardians can. She also has % max health and true damage built into her kit. You can build 0 power on Serket and her ultimate will always do that 500 base damage no matter the protections of your opponent, your penetration level or anything else, making her pretty damn strong when built with a low power tanky build. I personally think Serket is one of the best designed gods in the game, and the fact that she's viable as both a tanky support and a bursty jungler simultaneously just is a testament to that. I really hope we see more gods like her in the future, but in the almost 6 years since she was released we haven't really seen that, and the few assassins that have seen success in the support role have been target nerfed specifically in these areas that made them strong in support. It's clear Titan has a vendetta against aggressive assassin supports, and while I personally think that's the wrong way to go about it and it limits creativity and makes the game boring, it's not my game and I can't tell them how to run it. All I can do is make my case on why I think assassin supports, among these other 4 off-roll picks, should have a place in Smite. But that's it from me on this one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like before you leave and comment down below which of these are your favourite off-meta picks to choose in Conquest. And I'll catch you guys in another video later on. Have a great day, stay safe, and peace out you nerds.